Online and in person. And welcome to Portland Housing Bureau's 2024 Budget Advisory Committee meeting, the first of two. My name is Michael Bonacore. I'm the interim director at the Portland Housing Bureau. We'll take a minute to do some quick introductions. But just so it's clear for folks, we have people in the room as well as a number of folks online. And so we're getting settled in and about to kick off the meeting. This is being recorded, just so everybody understands that. So forgive me as we work out our logistics. Norma, will we will we be able to see both the folks online and the PowerPoint at the same time? Got it. Okay, great. Well, thank you. So we'll go ahead and do introductions before we have the PowerPoint up, so we're a little more able to see everybody. So maybe we'll start in the room. So again, Michael Bonacore, I'm the interim director of the Portland Housing Bureau, and I will go to my right. And if folks could just say their name, my pronouns are he, him, your name, pronouns, your affiliation, that would be great.
Hi, good afternoon. Breon Dedecker, she, her pronouns. I'm the manager of the Rental Services Office at the Portland Housing Bureau.
Hello, Antoinette Pietka, she, her pronouns, interim policy and planning manager at the Housing Bureau.
Angel Landron Gonzalez, finance and accountant manager for the Housing Bureau. My pronouns are he, him.
Chris Gustafson, he, him pronouns. I am the accounting lead for the Portland Housing Bureau.
I'm Dory Hellier. I'm development incentives manager at the Housing Bureau, she, her.
Good afternoon, John Trin with the Neighborhood Housing Preservation Manager. My pronouns he, him.
Yes, we'll jump across the table.
Good afternoon, Tanya Wolfersberger, she, her. I'm the manager for the Housing Development Construction Services team at the Housing Bureau.
Hi, Jill Chen, she, her pronoun. I'm the manager for housing investments and portfolio preservation. Between Tanya and I, we are AKA multifamily production. And I use she, her.
Hi, I'm Sarah Stevenson. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the executive director at Innovative Housing, and I'm also on the Portland Housing Advisory Commission. I'm the co-chair.
Awesome. Thanks. Let's jump into the audience. Bimal, would you wave and say hi? Gabriel.
Gabriel Matthews, he, him pronouns. I am the Public Information Officer, PhD.
Hey. Would you introduce yourselves? Welcome. Thanks for coming. Awesome. Welcome. Welcome. There's food and water in the back. Feel free to help yourselves. So now we'll go to folks on screen. Norma, maybe you can help me with this because for folks on screen, it's harder to maybe see their names. Could you call names of folks?
Ayman, will you go first?
Good afternoon, everyone. Ayman Abu Al-Ajin, he, him pronouns, budget analyst with the Portland Housing Bureau.
Leslie?
Good evening, everyone. I'm in Baltimore, Maryland right now, joining you. Leslie Goodlow, Equity and Business Operations Manager for the Housing Bureau.
Laura?
Hi, everyone. Laura Golino de Lovato, she, her pronouns, Executive Director, Northwest Pilot Project. And also I sit on the Rental Services Commission.
Desi?
Did I hear my name? Hi, this is Desi. She, her pronouns, and I am the Housing Portfolio Finance Coordinator with on the HIP team, the SPHB.
Christina?
Hello, everyone. My name is Christina Goodman. My pronouns are she, her. I work in the Permanent Supported Housing team at the Joint Office of Homeless Services, and I am also part of the Rental Services Commission.
Uma?
Good afternoon. My name is Uma, and I'm part of the data team at PHP.
Michelle?
Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Helm. My pronouns are she, her. I am also on the data team listening in today.
Jessica? We'll move on to Gina.
Hi, everybody. My name is Gina Scott. I'm the Risk Analysis and Compliance Manager at PHB, and my pronouns are she, her.
Gwen?
Hello, everyone. My name is Gwen Thompson. I'm the Communications Analyst at PHB. My pronouns are she, her.
And we also have Anna Shook. She's in the hospital right now, but she is present, so she can't talk. She's part of the Budget Advisory Committee.
All right, thank you. And just so everyone knows, Anna's okay. Anna's with someone that she's looking after, but she's okay. All right, so Norma, if you could start the PowerPoint, that would be awesome. And I'll just say a few words about the Budget Advisory Committee process. So traditionally, well, every bureau at the city has to have a Budget Advisory Committee process, and so this is ours. And traditionally, we have a subcommittee of the PHAC, the Portland Housing Advisory Committee, that serves as our Budget Advisory Committee panel. And so we break this process up over 2 meetings. So at today's meeting, we will present information and ask for some feedback. And then we will take that feedback away, come back for a second meeting on January 25th, I believe, report back on how we've integrated that into our planning and budgeting process, and then ask the members of the Budget Advisory Committee to sign a letter affirming our budget submission to the city for the fiscal year 24-25. So there are official members of the Budget Advisory Committee, but we will also have the opportunity for public testimony today, and we will be listening to that and integrating it into our planning as well. So this year, we have also welcomed members of our Rental Services Commission to join us, and Laura Galino Di Lovato has agreed to also be a member of the Budget Advisory Committee. So we have an additional member, Felicia Tripp, who is not able to be here, but will join us for the second meeting. So our Budget Advisory Committee members are Sarah Stevenson, Felicia Tripp, Laura Galino Di Lovato, and then from PHB's staff, Desi and Anna will serve as representatives. So what we'll do today, Norma, if you could advance the slide, is we will, having done introductions, we'll give you an overview of our programs and budget. So give you some context for sort of where we're at and what we see our fiscal picture looking like in the year ahead. And then we'll take public testimony. So folks who are here from the public and would like to comment, give us feedback on what they heard, or whatever else it is they brought that they would like us to hear. We will take some time for that, and then have the opportunity for the Budget Advisory Committee members to have some discussion. So you see a lot of folks here today from Portland Housing Bureau. Our staff are here to be a resource during this conversation, and will be available afterwards if needed. So we ask you all for 2 hours of your time from 3 to 5 today. We've designed a budget that, or an agenda that may take only an hour and a half, so we'll do our best to use your time wisely, but also happy to take the full 2 hours if there's lots of discussion and just need to engage with you all. So we'll do our best on timing. And so that's an overview of how the afternoon's going to go. Can we see the next slide? Okay, so a bit more. I told you a bit about the Budget Advisory Committee process. And as you see up there, our goals are to increase community involvement in the management of city resources, to gain understanding of the Portland Housing Bureau and the relationship between the Bureau and the needs of the individuals who access our services, and to provide recommendations for you all to provide recommendations regarding goals, priorities, policies, and budget. And I don't know how impressed you are that I was able to read that from across the room, but I'm impressed with myself. So I'd like to take a moment for that. One more year without glasses. Let's go. Next slide, please. So as I said earlier, this is our first meeting. We will convene again on January 25th, same place from 3 to 5. Come back to you with, again, feedback on how we've integrated your feedback and where we're at in our budget submission process, and ask for endorsement from the Budget Advisory Committee members. Next slide, please. So a bit of an overview of the Portland Housing Bureau, because we're not done testing my vision yet. I don't think I'm going to pull this off, actually. But there are 4 broad categories in which the Housing Bureau focuses. So one, the first is, I'm going to look over my shoulder, actually. Oh, great. Well, that's not much better, Angel. It's very small. So the first bucket is production and preservation. So essentially, we fund construction and preservation of rental housing that provides long-term affordability for our community. Home ownership. Not everyone knows that we operate in this space, but we fund down payment assistance for for new home buyers, education programs, and tax exemptions and credit to increase home ownership for vulnerable communities. We work to prevent displacement by stabilizing renters and homeowners where they live through policies and programs such as tenant protections, legal aid funding, and home repair loans and grants. And then finally, we support our community's efforts to end homelessness primarily through investing in programs via the Joint Office and through short-term rent assistance, as well as efforts to increase supportive housing. So again, 4 broad buckets that we operate in. Next slide, please. And again, just a snapshot of some key consideration for this year's budget process. And these are as articulated by the mayor, that all of the bureaus need to sort of strive to address with their budgets. So one is meeting the most critical needs of Portlanders while balancing fiscal constraints. And of course, it is a priority not just of the Housing Bureau, but of the city to address our affordable housing crisis. And then carrying out the transition to the new form of government approved by Portlanders. So this is a big year for our community and for all of the employees of the city of Portland as we work to organize ourselves around transitioning to a new form of government in which there are 4 geographies represented by 12 city commissioners and a mayor who oversees a city administrator. Which is a big shift for us to make in the way that we operate as a city. So that is in the background of what we are considering as we develop our budget. Next slide, please. So we are in a constraint year. The Housing Bureau must, as all bureaus in the city, must account for a 5% reduction in general fund. So the city's general fund budget is constrained this year. And so we have to incorporate a 5% cut to our general fund. You'll hear more specifics about that as we get deeper into the presentation, but just to quell any initial concern about that. We're actually only about 1% of our budget is represented by the general fund. So we are fortunate that this is not as big a fiscal hit to us as it may be for other bureaus who have a larger portion of their budget funded in the general fund. But it is something we have to accommodate in our budget. We also have to incorporate costs related to the charter transition. Our bureau will is situated with other bureaus that currently report to Commissioner Rubio in the Community and Economic Development service area, and that will become more formalized in the new form of government in which a deputy city administrator oversees our service area, and that deputy city administrator reports up to a city administrator. So we are formalizing the connection between our service area bureaus. And then another constraint that all bureaus face in this context is to limit decision packages to items that either identify existing budget resources or external revenue to balance the expenses, or include new general fund only for specific items related to charter transition, which I think in short means we're not going to do new stuff this year. We're not proposing new stuff to do. So with that, before I turn it over to Leslie, I will just say, as we sort of showed in the agenda, we're going to spend some time sort of presenting and talking to you about our programs and our budget, but we are going to make sure we leave time both to hear from the public and to engage our budget advisory committee members in conversation. So thanks for being patient while we talk at you for a little bit longer. Pass it over to Leslie.
Hello again. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the Bureau priority areas. So next slide. So the Housing Bureau has the first slide I'm going to talk about is the current housing need based on the housing needs analysis. As you can see, based on the slide, that we need over 60,000 affordable units and over 20,000 moderate income housing units. The housing needs analysis breaks out the needed housing by income level. So over the next 20 years, we will need 60,000 units affordable to households earning 0 to 80% AMI. Roughly half of the 120,000 units forecasted to be needed over the next 20 years, which we know will be a heavy lift. Next slide. So rental housing production over the last 8 years since the housing emergency was declared in 2015, we have opened more than 4,860 units of affordable housing. Over 40% of those units are deeply affordable to families who make little or no income, meaning 0 to 30%. In total, over 9,500 people have been provided homes. And that includes low-income seniors, people that have been previously homeless, families vulnerable to displacement, and working Portlanders whose incomes were not able to keep up with the rising rents. We also have 3,900 plus affordable units in development. And as you can see from the map, the triangles, excuse me, the triangles are the ones that are in construction or pre-development. And then the green circles are units that are buildings that have recently opened. So we have many, many buildings and units that are in process to meet the need. Nearly 1/3 of the 3,900 units in the development pipeline are deeply affordable. Again, that's affordable to households earning 0 to 30%. 30% of the units are family size units, and 17% are permanent supportive housing units for homeless households and others needing wraparound support services. Next slide. Excuse me. One of the programs that Michael mentioned is homeowner access and retention. We have served in the 22-23 fiscal year, over 1,200 households received homebuyer education and counseling, and we provided 502 households with necessary home repair funds in both grants and loans. Next slide. Through the North-Northeast Housing Strategy, which began in 2015, using interstate TIF dollars, we have to date opened 501 rental units. We have 375 units in progress, so they are somewhere in the development pipeline. We've provided 821 home repair grants, 158 home repair loans, and 127 families are now homeowners. You can see on the map that where the buildings are, the rental buildings are the circles, and the 2 squares are home ownership properties or that are to be developed in the near future. Oh no, I'm sorry, I'm with my glasses on. Those are 2 that are already open, Olin and Kilpatrick. We have 2 other properties that will be home ownership developments, Cary Boulevard out in North Portland, and then the Abbey site in conjunction with the Strong property on Alberta. And then last but certainly not least is the Rental Services Office. You can see the number of community partners that work with the Rental Services Office to provide education, counseling, and legal services to to tenants and landlords. They've provided legal services to over 1,440 households per year. Individuals provided landlord-tenant education, information, or referral, 7,088 people per year. And folks provided in-depth housing stabilization services through our community partners is over 1,000 households per year. And before we move on to our budget and Angel, are there any questions about the our priorities? Let's see. Somebody's in the chat. Oh, that's Anna. All right. Well, Angel, take it away.
Thank you, Leslie. Hello again. My name is Angel Landron, for the record, Finance and Accounting Manager for the Portland Housing Bureau. Next slide, please. So here we have our revised budget for fiscal year 24.
Hey, Angel, maybe slide the mic just a little closer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Better? Better?
Better.
Now?
Thank
okay.
Thank you.
So the Portland Housing Bureau administers over 40 accounting funds, and they are summarized in 9 categories that we are seeing in this graph. So we have the revised budget of fiscal year 24. And what does that mean is when we have the adopted budget that occurred on July 1st, revised mean modification that has happened since then. So at this point, the adopted budget was for $277.5 million, and now we have a small decrease of $275.7 million. And the main reason of that is the decrease in project allocation due to an updated disbursement schedule for multifamily projects. The 9 categories of revenue sources that the Bureau has is Metro Bond, Portland Bond, grants, tax increment financing, housing investment fund, construction excise tax, property fund, Portland Clean Energy Fund, and the general fund. Next slide, please. So as part of the charter transition that Michael mentioned earlier, for this fiscal year, we have been combining our program offers. So basically, we had 17 program offers, and to make it simple for the service area, we have been combining services and reducing them from 17 to 7. However, that doesn't change the program delivery. It's just more for budget presentation purposes. So what we are seeing here is how the budget is allocated by program offer for this fiscal year 24. Next slide, please. So here we have the FTE, that means full-time equivalent employees represented under the combined grouping of program offers. So we see that we have 89 positions with a total cost for fiscal year 24 of $14 million, and that represents 5% of the total budget of the Housing Bureau. Next, thank you. Next slide, please. So here we have how the this slide represents the mix of funding from fiscal year 22 to fiscal year 24, and the forecast for fiscal year 25 to fiscal year 30. We can see here that in fiscal year 27 is when we expect that the bonds and TIF resources will be depleted. So historically, the tax increment financing was the largest resource for the Bureau. That was surpassed by the bond measures, and the decline of these main resources are going to happen at the same time, starting in fiscal year 27. An important thing to mention is that from the total budget of $275 million, 43% comes from the bond dollars. The spend down of the bond and TIF resources is expected to happen between fiscal year 27-28. That will depend on the timeline of the planned disbursement of the multifamily projects in the pipeline. Something that we are getting in fiscal year 25 that we didn't get before is an increase in the general fund allocation of a returning TIF. That was approved by City Council in 2023 when they declared to assign 25% of returning TIF from the expired districts to the Portland Housing Bureau as general fund. The Bureau's goals as well is to utilize the flexibility of returning TIF money in single-family programs without the restriction of income level or geographic location that are required by other restricted resources like TIF, CDBG, grants, Portland bonds, etc. Next slide. Here we have the same graph, but showing the decline in bonds and TIF dollars as part of their depletion in fiscal year 27. The blue years highlight not counting with TIF and bonds in the years to come. There is an exploration of potential new TIF districts in East Portland and Central City. However, the period to receive dollars from potential new TIF districts is 5 to 10 years. Next slide, please. So the Portland Clean Energy Fund is a grant provided by the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, administered by the Housing Bureau to provide up to $60 million over 5 years to regulated multifamily affordable housing projects, specifically to make upgrades in efficient and renewable energy in new and redeveloped affordable housing projects. Is there any questions? If not, I get back to Michael.
Sure. So before we open it up for public testimony, I'll just recap some of what you just heard. We find ourselves, despite facing a 5% cut in general fund this year, in a pretty stable outlook for the year ahead. But we also know that in the next few years, the two big sources of the majority of our funding, which are the Portland Housing Bond and the Metro Housing Bond, as well as the current tax increment financing districts that bring in revenue that we then push out to develop new housing in the community, those will all be depleted. So we sort of have the context of a stable year ahead, but also forecasting, a gap and a need to both plan for what that will look like, but also, understanding that there are these larger efforts both at the city and the state acknowledging the recent housing needs analysis that was adopted by Portland City Council that demonstrates what we need in our community is the opposite of the Portland Housing Bureau's funding being dramatically reduced. In fact, we need to, as a community and as a state, more aggressively produce new affordable housing. So that will be a challenge for the Bureau, but one that is shared by city, county, and state to help us figure out. And then, as Angel shared, the Portland Clean Energy Fund has allowed us to supplement some of our funding into the community to provide more efficient building systems, so that can help offset some of the cost of building new developments and also just create healthier living environments for the folks who live in them. We'll return to this fact again when we have discussion for the Budget Advisory Committee, but just to put the fine point on the budget constraint that we're facing, again, 5% of general fund, general fund represents about 1% of our budget. A 1% reduction for us represents a little over $212,000. We're able to absorb that without any impact to, without reducing services to the community or without reducing our staffing levels. And so we'll ask you a question about that during the discussion period, but just as people may be wanting to give testimony relative to what you just heard, want to kind of fill that picture out for you. So, we've got a couple of folks with us in the audience who may want to provide testimony, and then Norma, I know you're tracking who has signed up, yeah? Would either of you like to provide testimony? Or were you just here to listen and... Great. We can take questions, and if it feels like maybe we'll wait until after the meeting to just sort of like have staff address them, we'll be happy to. But if you want to give it a crack, we're open. Okay, great.
Well, we have a few people who signed up but are not present on Zoom. Other than Kim, did you want to provide public testimony?
No, thank you for asking.
Okay. So then there's no others.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, with that, we will pivot to questions and discussion. So just want to acknowledge that the logistics may be a tiny bit tricky. We have one of our Budget Advisory Committee members here and 3 others with us on Zoom. The staff of the Housing Bureau will not engage in in answering the questions. We want to hear from Sarah and Laura and Anna and Desi. Those are all of the committee members, yeah. So I will just, I'll ask the questions one at a time and just give you all the opportunity to respond. As I just said, the 5% budget constraint equates to 1% of the Bureau's budget and approximately $212,000. We intend to reduce administrative costs that can be absorbed without impacting services to the community or reducing our workforce. Do you agree with this approach, or what reaction or different ideas do you have? And I promise it's the only yes/no question. Oh, and I should say, it's there is sort of a broader question that we will pose to all of you. It's an unusual situation in that general fund, which is the most flexible, represents a tiny portion of our budget. So there's not a ton of room there to, recommend, sort of big picture moves. Most of what creates our budget are revenue sources that are dedicated to very specific things. But there is the opportunity, as we sort of move through questions, to just sort of take a bigger picture look at both our budget and our programs and how we're delivering services. So that caveat. Sarah, go ahead.
Well, I agree with your approach to the 5% or the constraint and not affecting services. So, is that all I'm supposed to answer right now?
There's
okay.
Yeah.
Laura.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, PHB team. I also agree with this approach. I think relative to the overall PHB budget, it's very small, and you've clearly identified where, that there's not going to be a negative impact to services. So that's not bad. So thank you. I'm good with that.
Thank you.
And Desi?
Yes, I agree.
It gets better for me, I promise. Okay. Second question. What opportunities do you see for the Bureau as we move to a new form of government? What excites you and what concerns you?
Should we go in the same order?
Sure.
I don't have a lot of concrete expectations about what happens with the new form of government. I'm taking a wait and see approach. One of the concerns I have is that housing is fairly complicated, and educating 12 new commissioners or whomever needs to understand all the ins and outs and nuances of it strikes me as an opportunity and a challenge. But I mean, Portland Housing Bureau is well positioned to help with that. So I'm sure that we'll get it done.
Yeah, it will be interesting. And for folks who have not been tracking it closely, our Bureau and our service area bureaus, which includes the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, the Bureau of Development Services, Prosper Portland, and then there will also be joining us, although it's not clear yet structurally how it will work, is, someone help me, it's like spectator venues, thank you, yeah. So, so rather than that cluster of bureaus reporting up to a commissioner, which if you track often changes, like bureau assignments change, the service area will report up to a deputy city administrator, and that person will report to a city administrator. So part of what is anticipated is that because those will be staff positions that hopefully are reasonably stable throughout, sort of the turnover that we see in city council and mayoral elections, that may provide some stability and less need to, so frequently bring individual commissioners up to speed. But there will, as Sarah indicated, then be, relationships with 12 legislators instead of the current. So there will be education to be done. Another thing that I think serves us well is that this service area, as I said, currently exists. It will stay as it is, and Commissioner Rubio has been working to sort of build collaboration with us. So those working relationships won't be new, and I think the organization is intuitive in terms of how we already, naturally need to be sort of collaborating. Thanks for that, Sarah. Yeah. Laura?
Yeah, actually think that the new form of city government provides a really wonderful opportunity for stability in leadership because of the deputy city manager. And I think there's an opportunity there to get somebody who is familiar with the challenges and complexities of housing. And so I see it as a real opportunity, but then I'm an optimist, so factor that in. And and with a strong leadership in that deputy city administrator position, I think that there could be some great education for the new city council at a level that isn't going to need to be as granular as the council members as bureau directors have now. So I think, there might be better opportunity for a broader conversation on policy and policy issues. I think the concern, of course, is sort of in the same vein, getting the person on board, getting the best candidate, getting up to speed, and how is the entirety of PHB staff, as well as BPS and BDS and Prosper staff, how are they all supported during this transition to do their best work, to think big, to continue going forward? I do want to say that we have some just fabulous members of the PHB team who've been doing this work for a very long time, and new staff who are awesome too. And I think it's all about the staff. So I think that the concern would be that we make sure that the staff are supported and feeling good. And to sort of go out of my lane a little bit, maybe included in the recruitment and hiring process for that deputy city administrator. So, I'm cautiously optimistic that it's going to provide a really good opportunity.
Thank you, Laura. Desi?
Yes, thank you. I too am enthusiastic about the changes coming. I think that it's an opportunity to make some needed changes that have been identified for quite a while now. And I am hopeful that it also will be an opportunity to embody our core values even more so. So that's what I will be keeping an eye on and advocating for, is that if there are folks that are coming into new leadership positions, that they are embodying our core values such as anti-racism, equity, collaboration, communication. So I've seen those at the Housing Bureau, and I think that I'm just grateful for the staff here too. So I think that will be a great thought process to go through and see how we can do that. And I'd also say that that communication and collaboration on the part of staff is really helpful for staff retention and making sure that transitions are smooth. So I have a lot of confidence in that, though. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Since we're on this topic and we're doing well on time, I'll just say a little bit more about the process that we know that's ahead of us, just to give you all a bit more awareness of what we're anticipating in the year ahead. So the bureaus will continue to report to our current city commissioners through this calendar year. At the beginning of the fiscal year, which is July 1, City Council will bring on an interim city administrator and an interim deputy city administrator for each of the service areas. So it's anticipated that there will be a sort of a 6-month period between July and January 1, or well, bleeding into sort of the new council getting their feet underneath them, when we don't have sort of these permanent staff positions in place, but we do have sort of folks sort of establishing some of the infrastructure through this transition. So hopefully there's a little more in place so that on January 2nd, it's not sort of like instantaneously everything new and trying to figure out how to function. So certainly a lot of questions, you know, and we're anticipating, you know, everybody at the city, from the mayor through staff, are anticipating that there will be some, you know, some uncertainty and some bumps in the road, but also some very intentional planning going on to try to smooth the transition as much as possible. For those of you who track city council meetings or occasionally come to them, next week council will start meeting in the building that Portland Housing Bureau occupies, which is 1900 Southwest 4th Avenue. So we'll also see some logistical shifts as they start to do renovation work in City Hall to get ready for the new, larger council. So lots ahead, and certainly, you know, in the transition, I think we may occasionally ask for some patience as we're all trying to find our footing. But again, there is a very intentional planning process underway to try to smooth that path. Any other questions or comments on this before we go to the next question? Okay, here's the big, expansive one. So regardless of budget, what would you most like to see the Portland Housing Bureau focus on in the year ahead?
Well, everything that you're doing, obviously, all the priority areas are important. One thing I feel like we need to surface a little bit this year is infrastructure and the health of the affordable housing delivery system. And I will just say, as a multifamily developer, operator, owner, we are facing a pretty serious crisis, frankly, across our portfolio, and I think it's industry-wide. It's not just in PSH, but permanent supportive housing is probably the first place we're going to see a lot of the problems coming up. Financially, we're having to pay for security, which has not been something historically in our budgets. Insurance rates are doubling. Physical building needs are exceeding anything we expected, and I think some of this is, you know, holdover effects from pandemic. Some of it I can't quite explain, but the industry is extremely stressed, and it's affecting operations, but it's also going to bleed into our development capacity. So one of the things we'll have conversations about this, of course. I mean, we've already had some. But I think the city, as a funding partner and as, you know, a housing provider of, we need to think about how to keep this industry healthy. Mm-hmm. Because if organizations or buildings start to fail, and I don't mean to be catastrophic about it, but I think we're going to start to see some failures. That will affect our ability to get capital and, you know, and investment for future projects. So I feel like the city really needs to take a somewhat proactive approach around, I don't know what the emergency assistance might be. I don't know what the request may end up being, but I would recommend setting aside some funds that you can use in case of emergencies. Yeah.
Yeah. I hate that you're
happy to answer questions about that. I don't want to dump too much on you, but
no, thank you.
And I don't know, it's probably already understood, but I don't see any. There may be some budget flexibility with some funds that don't have to be used just for capital, or that we could pull out for emergencies.
Yeah, I hate that you're saying that, because I know that it's true. It's an awful reality, and it's certainly increasingly hitting our radar. And so it is helpful to have you surface that here, and we're with you. We want to get behind figuring out how to position ourselves to support the community in this. Yeah. Laura?
Yeah, I thank you, Sarah. That really echoes some of what I was thinking. I think definitely for me, from my perspective, getting a handle on managing PSH and the permanent supportive housing units that are coming on board, and the neighborhoods around them, the residents themselves, with the robust support services that make the housing investment really successful. And I think that, without getting too granular about PSH it is really about the housing and the services. So how do we support our housing providers, both the for-profit, nonprofit housing providers? How do we support the tenants and the social service providers with all of the other services that residents need? Now, that might not really be specifically in PHB's wheelhouse, but it is a sort of a ready to address an emergency measure, the damage to buildings, the aging buildings, the insurance costs, the neighborhood impacts. I think all of those things are going to get magnified. And so I think we want to be really ready to have a response. It feels like we're behind on that already. So I'd like to see that. The other focus is, I guess the other focus area I'd really like to see, and again, echoing what Sarah said, really having the opportunity that the current areas that the Housing Bureau is working on are not going to need to be cut back. So keeping those things, and the very important work that the Rental Services Office is doing, but also really starting to think about those years, 3 or 4 years down the road, when the TIF funds and the bond funds are gone. And what does that mean? And what could PHB be thinking of now in terms of additional actions to take, additional bond in partnership with Metro, and I'm just, sort of, this is what I would be doing, just brainstorming to thinking about, it's scary. So let me just say, it's scary to think about the law, that cliff, and it's a big cliff and a big issue. So I'd love to see, maybe as a sub-focus area, some thinking around that now. Why wait? So I guess that would be sort of my thought.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll touch on a couple of things. One is, sort of thank you for the framing of what's in PHB's wheelhouse. And, I think the answer is some stuff. But also we need to be, we all need to be thinking at a systems level about like how we are not in singular wheelhouse based ways trying to address this. I mean, yes to that, but also thinking about like, at a jurisdictional and, funding partner level, how are we convening ourselves and organizing, systems level responses that are sort of integrated and reinforce each other as opposed to isolated. And I was saying to Sarah earlier, this has been on Commissioner's radar, and we are certainly, surfacing it with increasing urgency. And you will see before a new budget is adopted, you will see us starting to do work to move on this issue, because it is it's very real. So again, really appreciate surfacing that. And then just to sort of harken back to something that we touched on in the presentation is we do sort of have this cliff event. We anticipate it being, optimistically, frankly, but I think realistically, I think it will get smoothed out in some fashion or another. But one aspect of getting to the other side of it is the exploration around new TIF districts that's underway now. So I think, what someone said was, if we sort of move at the pace that we're moving, which is brisk, and get those sort of locked into place, it takes a number of years for there to to be an accrual of those tax increments to then start funneling back into housing production and other sorts of investments. So if there were nothing else, there would be sort of a valley where we do sort of run off a TIF cliff, and then we would start to see it pick back up with the assumed creation of new TIF districts. So that is in the works. And then also to your point, Laura, we don't know yet where it might come from, but I do think there's a sense of recognition and some urgency in the community that we all see the clock ticking on these housing bonds, and there's a real hope that with so City Council recently adopted a housing needs analysis that reflects work at the state level to understand what's needed statewide. That will be followed by a housing production strategy at the city level, and all of this we are hoping it won't be PHB that's sort of driving the bus around a new bond measure, but that we are contributing to the narrative that helps the community recognize the need and build momentum for whatever that next hopeful revenue source is, and also that our state partners are pushing hard on that as well. So again, thank you for all of that. Desi?
Yeah, I feel like that my answer is a little bit boring, because when I was thinking of focus, I was thinking of stability just in light of the upcoming changes. So a maintenance of stability, I think with our staff will just, it's definitely from a staff perspective, but we are busy and we will continue to be busy. And I think that if we move forward in a way where there's communication and transparency, then we can continue doing what we're doing, and hopefully even more as we're able to see the need increase, that we're also able to meet that need and deploy more funds in the future. And so, yeah, definitely to continue on as we have with the level of stability would be great.
Nice. Well, now that each of the committee members has had a turn, I'll just kind of open it back up to all of you. If there's anything you heard someone else say that you want to react to, or questions, Laura or Desi, raise your hand, or Sarah, jump in.
Just echoing what Laura brought up, I was very focused on my particular issue, but of course it's very helpful, and we talked about this a little bit ahead of time, to collaborate more with the partners who do have funding sources that can support the services element of PSH. That is clearly extremely important, and integrating the service dollars with the housing dollars in an even more seamless and cooperative approach, I think would be fantastic. And it sounds like you guys are already working on that.
We are, and your voices help fortify that effort, so it matters. Thank you for saying that. One of my skills as a director is holding awkward silences. I take a degree of pride in that. Just want to make sure folks have the opportunity, if they're holding any thoughts or questions before we wrap up.
I don't really have anything else to add. I do really appreciate this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to chewing on all of this a little bit more, and then maybe discussing a little bit more at our next meeting. I do want to say that partly because I sit on the Rental Services Commission, I'm more closely aware of the work that the Rental Services Office is doing and the support for tenants and housing providers around legal services and those support services that the office offers are really critical. So I think we also want to be thinking, just again down the road, how do we continue to build up those services and that support. And I have one other thing that flew away, but it'll come back. Thank you, Michael.
Absolutely, thank you, Laura. And I just want to check in. So I think Anna is probably not available, but just want to make sure that if Anna, if you're there and have anything you wanted to add, you're welcome to jump in.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Anna.
I don't have a lot to add. I think in my tenure at the Housing Bureau, in the times I've been involved in across Bureau committees, looking at new construction and preservation, I've noticed that we are, to me, approaching some pretty scary places with preservation, that we have a lot of older housing stock and that it needs a lot of shoring up, and it serves a lot of our most vulnerable populations. And it's not just in the official, in our official portfolio, but just what they call naturally occurring affordable housing. Older and older apartments and housing units that are getting more and more rundown. So I think this is a thing that we need to think about investing a lot of our resources in, because those are the same, when those units are lost, it exacerbates our housing crisis. So that was what was in my mind, and I think it sort of chimes with what Sarah was saying.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And I suspect that if Jill Chen could cheat and say something, she might add that as well. So thank you. Good. So as I said earlier, staff are here and available, so we'll be hanging out. Happy to take questions in between now and the next meeting. If committee members think of something that they, want to add, please email me or any of the staff. Yeah, we'll stay. We're here, and we really appreciate all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Laura.
Recording.